when I'm recording. So I'm going to drop the object in by simply clicking. It says cube. By the way, if I want to, and I know I'm going to go to subdivision modeling, then I can turn this into an editable object immediately, okay, if I want to. And then I'm going to click the hypernerves and drop the cube inside the hypernerves to make my subdivision object, all right? I just hit the H key, which centered it into the world. I can zoom in, zoom out. You remember all this stuff from before. The 1, 2, and 3 key, holding them down, allows me to pan, zoom, or orbit, okay? But now the goal is to make a chair. Now, this is actually kind of an instructive thing. Because I went to make object editable so quickly, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a seat for the chair that had a lot of grid in it. And then out of that grid, I was going to pull the legs. Well, because I did that silly thing where I put the object in the world right away, I didn't make the grid, all right? Now, there's a couple of ways to address this. The most obvious way is just to put a new cube in the world all over again. And as you've seen me do before, I'm going to go into this cube attributes area. And under the cube attributes, I'm going to say I want 5, let's say it's 6 segments in the x-axis and 6 segments in the z-axis. I don't need any in the y, and then look what that's done. It's allowed me to have this sort of square that I can start pulling legs and backs out of the chair, okay? So that's good enough for me. But let's just, I like to teach you guys new things. You know what, let's just stay on that. We'll just keep it right there. Now I can make it editable, and I can turn that editable thing into the cube, into the hypernerves object. Sorry about that. Cube inside. See, sometimes even I miss. All right, there we go. And I'm going to just scale this down. I'm going to take this and scale it. Oops, wrong way. I didn't make it editable yet. Sorry. Now I can make this editable, and I'm in object. I got to have the cube selected to choose object axes, points, lines, or faces. I'm going to do that and then just squish this down. Now, I'm doing this all by eye, but I want you to just notice that I do have real-world dimensions down here. This was obviously a chair that would be way too big for the real world. But for now, I'm doing it by eye, but I just want to point out that you actually can build it in such a way that it equals real-world dimensions. All right, so we have an editable, cube that's been edited, and we can go in and we can start selecting things. Now there we go, I'm just selecting some stuff, etc. This is very helpful to us because we're going to use this as the seat of the chair, and then we're going to choose things like this piece and that piece and that piece and that piece. And those are going to become the elements that we pull the chair legs out. Now I want you to notice that when I did that, I mentioned this to you guys before. I selected 2 things here. I could start all over again. Come on in. Yeah. I could start all over again by choosing, or I could just hit the control button, and I can just deselect that piece right there. It's no big deal, right? So there's no reason to start all over from scratch. So the next step is I've chosen the bottom pieces, and I'm going to build a fairly traditional chair. There must be some sort of name for it. Maybe the kind of chair that the Shakers or the Quakers used to build in the old days or something like that. A Parsons chair, is that what it's called? Parsons chair? Yeah, just a straight chair, etc. Now, typically in the old days, they'd make the seat by itself. They'd make each leg by itself. They'd make the back by itself. And then they'd glue all these parts together. This is a different way of going about doing it. We're going to start with a single thing, and then we're going to add things to it. If we wanted to build this thing in the real world, we'd have to take the chair apart when we were done. But let's go ahead and start. I've selected those things. I'm going to extrude. And remember that I told you, I just want to point one detail out to you, that I've got a huge radius here, right? And you remember I gave you a technique for getting rid of that radius. If you want the radius, that's one thing. But if you don't want that radius here, what you're going to do is you're going to pull this ever so slightly. See, it's coming, but I'm going to make it very thin. Let's just zoom in on that so you see how thin I've made it. I've made it super thin. And when I go to extrude a little bit further, you'll notice that now I still have a radius, but it's a tighter radius. It's tight to the piece. All right? So I'm going to zoom back out, zoom back to my original view, and I'm going to undo one level because what I want to do is I want to extrude, and somewhere this would be more like a table right now, but I'm going to make the area, I'm going to make the geometry that where the structure of the chair is going to be connected, right, which I just did. You'll see it'll come clear in a little clearer in a moment. And then I'm going to extrude down to the bottom, so that's about the way a chair is. Again, I'm doing it by eye, not by dimension. And then finally, because those things are so round down below, I'm just going to do that little trick that I do where I add just a little bit of geometry and it makes it straight off. I want you to also notice that these legs are round. They're not square. If I wanted to make them square, I'd have to go through a different design process. But again, this is an introductory lesson in how to make a chair. Now, it seems obvious to me that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this section and I'm going to bridge it together with this section to make a strut in the chair. All right, so we're going to just go here and we're going to say bridge it. And I've already told you that it's good to keep that bridge. Whatever point you choose on this, you want to choose the corollary point on the other side. And there it goes. I made a bridge. Now, this one has the same problem that I mentioned before. It's got a huge radius in front. And the way that I solve that problem is I extrude it just ever so slightly, just like I did with the other one, and then I go and do the bridge. All right? And I go from the upper right of that to the upper right of that. Okay, there we go. Now you see I no longer have that round area in between. All right? I got a little bit of a radius in there, but not too bad. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. No big deal. Right? Same thing on the other side. Sometimes it can be awkward, you know, to choose these things. Look, see, I chose too much there. I'm going to manipulate around like this. I'm going to do the same thing again like so. I'm going to extrude ever so slightly. Now, if I was really good and I knew what I was doing, I would have selected all 4 of these to start and just done it all at the same time, which I can do. But, you know, we're going to walk through this. We're learning. So now I'm going to do bridge. I'm going to do that upper right to upper right again. All right? Now, if for some reason you think you got it but you didn't, you'll notice that when you do the bridge, it'll look funny. So you got to always assess the work that you've done against what you expect and what you see. You got to watch it. You got to look at it. All right? So let's undo that. Let's make it right. Upper right to upper right. Okay, good. Now, we have another issue, and that is that we want to put a strut between these things, right? We could do it from here to here, but I'm going to save wood because every little dollar I take out of every chair I build will be helpful. The problem is that how do we do we got to create more geometry. We have to create a face in there. One of the ways to do it, the way I showed you the other night, was to do edge cut. Now, edge cut implies that you have to choose edges to make it cut. Well, that's absolutely completely true. So I'm going to go in here, and this is one of those times when I'm going to turn off only select visible elements. I'm turning it off. And that means that as I sweep through all of these, hello? Oh, that's really quite funny, isn't it? Only select visible elements is off, and it won't select it. There we go. Sorry. Now it did. No, it still missed it. See, you can't always count on the program to do what you tell it to do. You got to double check it. So now it seems that I've chosen 8 edges. 4 on one, 4 on the other. Okay? Now I'm going to turn on the edge cut button. And edge cut's kind of cool because I don't have to interact with the model here. I do everything in edge cut using these attributes. And I want you to see what's there. I can create n-gons or not. I can do subdivision or not. I can scale it. I can offset it. I'm going to leave offset and scale alone for the moment. No need to really explain them. But I am going to do subdivision. I want you to notice that if I do 3, you know, it doesn't seem like anything happens, does it? I did 3 and then hit the return key, and it just doesn't seem like anything happens. That's because I've got create n-gons on. If I turn it off, I all of a sudden have lines there.